Hello, BookTube. Well, if you live in the United States of America, especially, you're probably having a pretty grim day today. Certainly, within 15 minutes of me logging back online, I was having a grim day. Those of you who don't live in the United States or maybe aren't keeping up on the news, the reason for this is because the draft of a Supreme Court decision was leaked and has since been confirmed to be genuine by Chief Justice Roberts. Uh, the text of which shows the court's intention to strike down Roe v. Wade, which makes abortion legal in the United States and has been settled law for 50 years. Survived challenges. And the three Nazi justices that Donald Trump appointed to the court, each one, when they were questioned under oath by the Senate, steadfastly asserted that that Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, that it was settled, it had withstood challenges and was as writ. That it wasn't on the table, in other words. Several of us said at the time, several other people said at the time, that the only reason, the one and only reason why the Federalist Society proposed any one of those three candidates, all three of them, the one and only reason was behind the door private assurance that the first chance they got, they would strike down Roe v. Wade. Well, it looks like they're going to do that in May or June sometime. Which means that abortion will go back to state control. There'll be all sorts of appeals. There'll be all sorts of nightmare scenarios, as you can imagine. And that's pretty depressing. And it gets even more depressing when you think about the wording of that leaked ruling. The wording makes it clear that this court is not going to stop at Roe v. Wade. I mean, Roe v. Wade has been settled law for 50 years, half a century. Gay marriage has not been. The decriminalization of gay sex has not been. Mixed marriage has not been. The law on those subjects, integrated schools, the law on all of those subjects has not been settled as long as Roe v. Wade. And a few of those cases were named specifically in this decision. So you look at that and you realize this is a pretty grim morning, pretty grim day in America. And naturally, when I came back online, my inbox was absolutely full of messages. And also my Voxer was full of messages. And it's quite a few of those messages were asking me what I thought. Naturally, I am aghast with horror that the Supreme Court, any sitting court, would disregard stare decisis, which is a Supreme Court principle that says that settled law is not open to political whim. This case, this overturning of Roe v. Wade, is explicitly at the behest of an arch-conservative religious minority crackpot fringe group. That's all it is. The overwhelming majority of the country does not want this to happen. Overwhelming majority of lawmakers does not want this to happen. This is just one fanatical group of religious extremists. And that is exactly, the winds of political change are exactly what stare decisis is there to prevent from happening. And every one of the neo-Nazis that were confirmed under Donald Trump said that they respected stare decisis. Now that we know they don't, and now that they're going to act on it, well, there's quite a bit that's on the table now. Even if we just stay under the restrictions of the Alito thinking on Roe v. Wade, even if we just stay under those restrictions, I don't see why we would. If you're abandoning stare decisis, then you're abandoning stare decisis. That means you can rule on whatever your corporate paymasters want you to do. But even if we stick just to the Alito ruling that's coming on Roe v. Wade, you don't look just at the case and just at the outcomes, and also just at the narrow group of people who are affected. It's pretty much an a-hole response to look at a Supreme Court ruling and think, well, I'm not one of those people, so I don't have to worry. Especially since the only way that this can be struck down is by the court taking a reinterpretive look, an originalist look, at the right to privacy, which Roe v. Wade was based on. And if that happens, well, anyway, I looked at all that news, I read all those emails, I answered all those Voxers, and one of those Voxer messages was from a wise friend who suggested that I should go to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, a used bookstore that I just love. That I should go to the Brattle, get a bunch of books that don't have anything to do with the news or grimness in the world, bring them back here and show them to you. Now, this friend knew perfectly well that trip to the Brattle is a bit of an undertaking, but I did it. It was good advice, so I took it. And not just because it might provide you with a distraction that you might need after a day of doom scrolling, but also because it provided me with a distraction that I also need. The Brattle, like I mentioned in an earlier video, the Brattle has always done that for me. I go into that, the Brattle has a sale lot outside that is thousands and thousands of $1, $3, and $5 books in no order whatsoever and changing all the time, so that even if you skip the inside of the store, you can still do a huge amount of shopping. Today I didn't feel all that much like chatting with anybody, so I stayed mostly in the outside lot, and it worked. Those carts always work. So I got a bunch of books. Don't know if I'll keep all of them or any of them. But I got a bunch of books, and I wanted to show them to you, just in case my wise friend was right, and you can use this as a distraction. Like I always say on this channel, you should stay well informed, but don't hurt yourself, especially if there's nothing at all that you can do about it. Nothing at all that you can do about it. If that's true, then why? I mean, yes, it affects everybody who has a human heart, but why excessively do that? Beat yourself up when there's nothing that can be done. Protest will not work in this case. The Democrats have the White House and a majority in both houses of Congress. They don't appear willing to use any of that. They don't appear willing to do anything in order to take measures to make sure this doesn't get worse or anything, or maybe even rectify it. The ERA is not law in this country. It could be tomorrow. There's nothing really that can be done. I heard Joe Biden's response about this and was stunned. Just stunned. Absolutely stunned. Saying, well, you got to go out and vote. You got to vote for more open-minded progressive candidates on the state, local, and federal level. You just got to go out and vote more. As if he were a community organizer instead of president of the United States. The ability with an executive order to do almost anything. I don't know what response he's expecting when his message to the public is you got to go out and vote 1 year after an election in which the public went out and voted in record numbers. They did that already, and it didn't do anything. It didn't stop this barbarity from happening, and it doesn't look like it can stop any other barbarities from happening. So I don't know what that might have been just his first response. I imagine there'll be a more considered response, probably in an address from the Oval Office, probably sometime soon. But see what I mean? if going out and voting 90 million strong, if barely squeaking by majorities, even doing that, getting states to flip and all that, if that wasn't enough to stop this from happening, because these three totally fraudulent justices managed to make this happen, I don't blame you for feeling like this is just totally out of your control. And if that's getting you down, I thought maybe a pile of books might perk you up a little. I hope so. Certainly, I'm hoping that it perks me up. So let's look at these books and forget about the news just for 30 minutes, okay? Just for 30 minutes. So you can go back to doom scrolling after that. I'll probably join you. So the first book is I got a bunch of mass market paperbacks. The first mass market paperback is an old pocket book. These things tend to be pretty durable. They tend to last a lot longer than later. They tend to last a lot longer than later paperbacks. And this is one I would ordinarily not have bought this author. But this particular series of books that this author wrote, I really kind of like. This is Earl Stanley Gardner. And this is The DA Goes to Trial. These are quick, very good murder mysteries about a young new DA, Doug Selby, and his sudden interest in getting to the bottom of mysterious crimes and happenings and whatnot. That where we get, like for instance, in the earliest couple of books, I think he wrote a dozen of these, and I don't know where this falls in line, but in the earliest couple of books, we get the distinct impression that Selby is that way in direct contrast to his predecessor. That he actually cares about justice, that he cares about whether or not the people in his jurisdiction are dying under mysterious circumstances, and takes a sort of active hand. I rather like it. I've read a lot of Earl Stanley Gardner. No one's read it all, but I've read a lot of Earl Stanley Gardner, and I like these books more than I do, for instance, Perry Mason, or any of his, the standalone thrillers. And I have 4 of these, I think, in old hardcovers, the type with the rationing pulp paper, so they're as light as a feather. I don't think I've ever seen any of them in paperback until now. This is one that I don't have. I'll gladly get the whole of the series. This one deals with a dead hobo. We don't call them hobos anymore, but there's a dead hobo. We have a quote on the back that is mired in period jargon. When did this come out? 1940. Find anything on that hobo's body? That's Selby asking the coroner, Perkins. The coroner answered, quote, "A billfold with one of those in case of accident cards. He has a brother in Phoenix. Funny thing about that, the man was a hobo, but his brother seems to be some pumpkins." You can infer from context that means his brother has money, but that was a phrase. That was a phrase in the 30s. Oh, aren't you some pumpkins? It isn't anymore. It hasn't been in 100 years. But anyway, the DA goes to trial. That was my first book. Then the second book is Murder Mystery. I've had this mass market many, many times. I don't think I have an ebook of it. I don't think an ebook of any of these. And somebody took good care of this. They read it and reinforced it. It's a classic. It's an old favorite. Once upon a time, a long time ago, I think it was Mark Richardson sent me a whole stack of these things. And he either sent me a whole stack of these, or I sent him a whole stack of these, or he sent me a whole stack of Tarzans. I don't know. Books fly back and forth between here and the old house up in Vermont. But this is A Morbid Taste for Bones. The very first Brother Cadfael murder mystery, which someone has lovingly cared for. That's true for a couple of books here. Someone has lovingly cared for this, and this introduces Brother Cadfael, who was a soldier at Crusade and is now a brother in a monastery. But he has not only a broader knowledge of the world than his brethren do, but also an instinct for solving crimes, a morbid taste for bones. A totally unlikely setting, and yet Ellis Peters ran with it for dozens of books, and they're all really good. They're all really good. This next one is a historical novelist. I've praised him on this channel before. If I can gradually find all of his books, I would. I don't think he's in ebook at all that I know of. Maybe one of you can correct me. I love him. Absolutely love this author. I think he's fantastic. This is Alfred Duggan, and this is his great book on Alfred the Great, called The Right Line of Cedric. Cedric was the Wessex king, maybe, and kind of a King Arthur figure. Might not have been real, but he was sort of the dividing line, the pitch line where all kings after him had to say that they were somehow descended from him in order to be king themselves. It's a dumb title. Duggan is terrible with titles. It's just terrible. He wrote a great Roman historical novel, one of the greatest Roman historical novels of them all, and he titled it Three's Company. And this is terrible too. Nobody knows who Cedric is. Nobody cares either. This is a novel about Alfred the Great, for Pete's sake. If you're going to write a novel about Alfred the Great, he ought to figure somewhere in your title. But I will clean this up. This has a little bit of yard sale dirt on it, and reread it. I don't imagine it'll take more than one reading, but I'll gladly give it. I reread Alfred Duggan whenever I find him. I would even grab a copy of Three's Company if I saw it. Then this next one is also historical fiction, far, far more recent. I read this once when it came out. Originally, I read this when it came to the bookstore. When did this come out? 2004. This is by C.C. Humphreys, and it is The Blooding of Jack Absolute. It's a sequel to his first novel, Jack Absolute, but it's really a prequel. It's his sterling, daring-do hero, Jack Absolute, from the novel Jack Absolute. Only here in this book, he's becoming a man. He's fighting in war for the first time. He's losing a sweetheart. He's being taught the ways of love by a worldly courtesan. He's learning about greed and dishonor. This is sort of the making of Jack Absolute before we get to the character in the book. And I don't know this paperback at all. I don't think I've ever seen this except in a hardcover. And I would love to find a copy of Jack Absolute. That would be great, because I kind of want to read that again before I read this again. But I remember liking this. I remember being quite good, especially a very peppy, action-filled conclusion. Then we have the first book in the series. I showed you the fourth book in the series, the same series, the other day. This is by Andrew Offutt, edited by Andrew Offutt, and this is Swords Against Darkness. Only this is the first volume. I think I showed you volume 4. And this is an anthology of sword and sorcery stuff in the tradition of Robert E. Howard. Good Lord. If I had a dime for every book I saw at the Brattle today that had some variation of in the tradition of Conan, in the tradition of Robert E. Howard, at least 10 different books by 10 different authors. It was just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable to me. There you have a classic Frazetta cover that can't help but remind readers of a certain vintage of Fantasia, Night on Bald Mountain, even though there are no wings on this particular demon. It's just terrific. And what have we got here? This is the first book in this series. What is actually in here? So we have Poole Anderson, Tale of Hawk, Geo Proctor, The Smile of Oisia, Bruce Jones, Pride of the Fleet. I don't think I know that at all. Manly Wade Wellman, of course, Straggler from Atlantis. I've read that before in a different anthology than this. Richard Tierney, The Ring of Set, Raul Garcia Capella, Lar Garut's Bane. Dragon's Teeth is in here by David Drake. That is absolutely fantastic. It's an absolutely fantastic story, an Arthurian story, but not like any that you've ever read. And The Sustenance of Hoke by Ramsey Campbell. So that sounds like a pretty good... I'll probably read Dragon's Teeth again in here right away. But then there are a couple of stories in here that I know nothing about. Some of the authors I don't know anything about. Oh, the bean has started slurping. You have started slurping. You can't go a video without slurping. Oh, somebody's very tired. And yet, we're going to go on a walk, because I've been using every technique that I can think of today to make myself feel good, to get myself out of a news rabbit hole. I believe the noxious 21st century term for it is self-care. And although I mock the term, I strongly think you should do the substance. Do whatever you can to pull yourself out of the news rabbit hole, because it's pretty bad. The repealing of Roe v. Wade is pretty bad. Like has been said many, many times, Roe v. Wade was settled law. It was the law of the land. It was federal law, a right that was given to women by federal law, by the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. And when it's removed, it will be the first such right ever to be removed in such a way. So totally disorienting, but yet another dark way in which this era is making history. But worth escaping. Let's do a lot more books. Let's talk about a lot more books, like this next one, which you may have seen on Michael K. Vaughan's channel. He went on and on about this character. This is Karl Edward Wagner, great fantasy writer who was indefatigable and a peach. And this is Bloodstone. This is a Kane story. Another Frank Frazetta cover. This stars his character, who was moody and sorceress. So Kane is sort of, when you think of Conan, you think sword and sorcery, where Conan is a mighty thewed barbarian with a huge chest and a huge sword. And anything that's physical that can be handled, he will handle it, whether it's giant apes or winged lizards or anything like that. But every once in a while, he comes up against a sorcerer, and he has nothing but contempt for them. He hates it. Hates sorcery. And Karl Edward Wagner's Kane stories are a merging of the two. Kane is immortal. He's been around forever. He very well may be the Kane of biblical legend. And so he's a mighty warrior. He's impossible to kill. He's almost impossible to hurt. But he has also sorceress powers. And you quickly, it's only a few pages that you need in any Kane novel or short story before you suddenly realize, oh, this is a very different character from Conan. I'm surprised this doesn't say in the tradition of Robert E. Howard or Conan. I'm surprised it doesn't, because most of these things do. Most of the things I saw today do, but I haven't read a Kane book in so long. So long. Could it be that I haven't read one since this originally came out? Let's find out. Uh, yeah, it's entirely possible. This came out in 1975. It could be that I haven't read a Kane novel since then. That could easily be true. Oh, that's long overdue. That is long overdue. I mean, my interest was piqued anyway when I watched Michael's video. If I remember, I'll leave a link to. He did a video about Karl Edward Wagner and about Kane that was really good. So I think it was Michael K. Vaughan. Might have been Criminale. No, it was Michael K. Vaughan. I feel certain that it was. Well, anyway, I haven't read one of these in forever and ever. I really do like Karl Edward Wagner. So Karl Edward Wagner, Andrew Offutt, these people know what they're doing. So I'm willing to trust myself too. And then the last of the mass markets is thrilling. But it's not fiction. It's by Andrew Boyle, and it's called The Fourth Man. The really neat. Again, somebody took care of this, and this is a really neat cover there. The wet pavements and the suspicious figure looking backwards. This is about the Cambridge spy scandal of almost 100 years ago. I mean, from the middle of the 20th century, where suddenly it turned out that a whole bunch of people, a key group of 5 people, maybe more than that, were Soviet agents. Were honored in the Soviet Union. Philby is honored in the Soviet Union, and so are all the others. They're passing along massive amounts of state secrets from Britain to the USSR. And this is, I love reading about the story. I've read a whole bunch of more modern accounts. This thing came out back when you could make a mass market of a nonfiction work. That had to be a long time ago. Yeah, 1980. This came out in 1980 in a mass market paperback, and I don't think I've ever read this particular account. I don't think I ever have. Andrew Boyle's name sounds familiar, but I don't know that mass market paperbacks in this era gave you an about the... Oh, it does. Okay, Andrew Boyle is the author of biographies of Brendan Bracken, Montague Norman, Erskine Childers, and Lord Trenchard. Okay, I might have read the Erskine Childers book. Well, anyway, mass market paperback, that is tricky, right? It's tricky to read a mass market paperback. I'm going to be worried that I'm destroying it the whole time. I'm hard on my things anyway. And with an ebook, with my Kindle, I absolutely don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it at all. All I have to think about is whether or not I'm being hard on the Kindle. And the Kindle I have the Kindle Paperwhite. It's a mighty tough little thing. It's got a flush screen, so it is vulnerable to scratches, but it's a mighty tough little device. I don't think it would be easy to hurt it, to really damage it in any kind of way that would make reading inhospitable. I think that would be pretty hard to do. Whereas that will be mother's milk to this. It'll be easy to do. I'll do it without trying with all of these mass market paperbacks. I don't think any of them really, except ironically the oldest one of all. These old pocket paperbacks with the actual end papers are usually pretty sturdy. Then again, these things were all free. They were store credit, and they were all $1 anyway. So, if I read them and they fall apart, I'll just hope that they last through that reading. That's good enough for me. Then we have, let's see here, some trade paperbacks and then some hardcovers. So the first trade paperback that I got is for Horror Mayhem, a BookTube reading event. Where I'm one of the hosts. It's all throughout the month of May. It was created by the Bookish Bryants, and it revels in horror stories. And we have prompts. We have weekly prompts. If you want to do that, you don't have to. If you read horror, any horror, you're fine. We're once again concentrating on short story form. So anything technically fewer than 200 pages, I would say an actual short story. So 20 to 40 pages. And the first week's prompt, if I remember correctly, is monsters. Even if I don't remember correctly, I still wouldn't pass this up. This is the old Carroll and Graf paperback of Stephen Jones's collection of the Mammoth Book of Werewolves, who are my favorite monsters for obvious reasons. And this has all sorts of, who have we got here? Ramsey Campbell again, Clive Barker, Susie McKee Charnas, Les Daniels, Dennis Etchison, Graham Masterson, Kim Newman, Michael Marshall Smith, Peter Tremaine, Karl Edward Wagner is in here. What werewolf story do we have from Karl Edward Wagner, I wonder? What will that one be? The Kim Newman story is Out of the Night When the Moon is Bright, When the Full Moon is Bright. The Manly Wade Wellman story is The Hairy Ones Shall Dance. I remember that. One Paris Night is the Karl Edward Wagner story. Okay, great. Well, I love these stories anyway. I loved this anthology when I originally had it. I got this when it came to the bookstore in 1994. I got this when it came to my bookstore. I gobbled it up right away. And it's long since gone, but I'll gladly take it back. The Mammoth books also did, I think it was Stephen Jones himself who did a big collection of Frankenstein as well. All sorts of short story considerations of Frankenstein, Frankenstein's monster, artificial life, that sort of thing, which never appealed to me quite as much. This is right up my alley, so I grabbed it right away for horror mayhem. Then we have, let's see here. This thing here I got mainly because it's a UK trade paperback, and I have a sweet spot for those. Although the more I look at it, the more interesting I think I might be. This is Con Iggulden, whose name has come up a few times here. He has a new book out in the American market, The Lion, that is very good, about Pericles of Athens. This is called Emperor Field of Swords. I guess there were many books called Emperor, and this is one of them. These big, tough UK trade paperbacks that I just love so much. The thing that kills me about all of you in the UK is that you're probably coming across all kinds of these things at your charity shops. You know, just down the road for you know, £1 a piece or something like that, and you're surrounded by them, and I barely ever see them, and I love them. And the thing that drew me to this is that it didn't seem to be just Roman military fiction, which has a large cachet. There are a lot of people who love that sort of thing. This seems to me to have a significant historical component as well, a social component. This book begins as Caesar completes his inner circle, the men who will be his generals. When the opportunity comes to stand as consul, he returns to a city where plots and conspiracies threaten the stability of everything he values. Julius Caesar only valued Julius Caesar, and he made more of those plots and conspiracies than everybody else put together. But he's clearly going to be the hero of this book, so I won't push that too much. Together, Pompey, Crassus, and Caesar form the uneasy alliance that is the first triumvirate. For Julius Caesar, it is the chance to forge a new path that will take him to Gaul and off the edge of the map to Britain. These are the last days of the old order, shaped and torn by a man without equal in human history. This is his summer. That strikes me as fascinating. I don't know. I wonder if this will tell me what I'm missing. Okay, so the first book is The Gates of Rome, Emperor, The Gates of Rome. Then Emperor, The Death of Kings. And then finally Emperor, The Field of Swords. I don't know how long the series went on after that. If you come across UK trade paperbacks of those first two, I would love to have them. But this one strikes me as having a social element, where Julius Caesar comes back and deals with politics, as opposed to the whole thing, the whole book being essentially the first 20 minutes of Gladiator. The movie Gladiator. There's a whole school of Roman historical fiction out there, where the whole book is just the first 20 minutes of Gladiator, unleash hell. And that can be thrilling in a way, but I'm interested in the alternative, let's put it that way. And then the other trade paperback that I got, squat, big, fat, beautiful Yale trade paperback of a book that I had in hardcover. I believe I might have hauled it on this channel. Maybe it was right before then. Let's check and see. I bet it was right before we were talking to each other. Yes, 2013. So, no, you wouldn't have seen it on this channel. This is by Rory Muir, and he did a 2-volume biography of the Duke of Wellington. This is the first volume, The Path to Victory, where you have a young Wellington. Big thing with even the embossing is even on the spine. Big love. I don't think I've ever seen this in trade paperback. I had the 2 hardcovers. There's this, and then the second volume is a blue theme, if I remember correctly. That is, no, they look virtually identical. The second one, I wonder if this will tell me. This is the paperback, so it probably will. Will you tell me what the other one was? I don't remember. Well, I don't remember the name of it. I'm hoping that it turns up in paperback at the Brattle if the first book did. And the second one might. I had both of these in hardcover. I think I reviewed them for a history magazine of some kind or other. But they're very good. And the reason why I didn't keep them is because I looked at them on the shelf. I would always look at them on the shelf at my biography section. And they were those 2 volumes, which split basically Wellington's life between everything up to the end of his military career. And then the second volume is his political career, social career. And I had those 2 thick volume hardcovers from the publisher, from Yale, on the shelf right next to the 2-volume Wellington biography by Elizabeth Longford that had come out 50, 60 years before. The Years of the Sword and The Pillar of State, where the two books split Wellington's career in exactly the same way. And I was looking at those 4 books took up almost half of one whole bookshelf, and I was thinking, okay, well, they're both remarkable in their way, but do you want, 5,000 pages on the Duke of Wellington? You don't. You're just not that interested in him to do that. You don't, with this figure, I don't think you really want to settle for a 1-volume biography. It's really 2 different halves of his life. So I remember thinking, well, if you're going to have a 2-volume biography of the Duke of Wellington, you should only have one. And if you're going to have one, it should be Elizabeth Longford. It shouldn't be Rory Muir. So I got rid of those hardcovers, and I've never seen them again. Never seen them used, ever. So this thing turned up, and I suddenly realized, it's okay to reread this. Absolutely. It was free. I'll grab it, absolutely, and reread it. I don't know that I'll keep the trade paperback. I'm not sure. This thing, unlike the paperbacks, is in really durable shape. It's brand new. But I don't know how durable it will be to read. We shall see. And then we have the 2 hardcovers, and then we'll be done. The first hardcover is an older thing. When did this come out? 1956. And it looks very good. It looks like something that I'm going to want to dig into right away. It's Historical Whodunits by Hugh Ross Williamson, who was a very good dramatist and a very good historian. And in this book, this little thing, he looks at a whole bunch of this is not a collection of murder mysteries. This is a whole bunch of mysteries from history that he goes at and examines. What do we have here? The death of William Rufus, for instance, the heir to the Conqueror. The Princes in the Tower, of course, is in here. The death of the identity of Perkin Waldeck, who claimed that he was one of the princes in the Tower forever and ever. He claimed that. His own mother said, yeah, you are my son. But it probably was. It almost certainly wasn't true. In fact, I say it certainly wasn't true. Of course, both princes died. But discovering exactly who this person was and why he did what he did, this will all be a little bit older scholarship. Some of these things scholarship has regressed a little. Who else do we have here? The Death of Amy Robsart. Did she fall or was she pushed? Did she kill herself? Or did her husband kill her so that the Queen of England couldn't say, well, you already have a wife. So you don't need me as a wife. Let's see. There's the gunpowder plot. There was that is fascinating. The murder of Sir Thomas Overby. I think, if I remember correctly, Williamson has written a lot about Overby. I've never found any of his books. This is a good one to have. I'm happy to have this one. Let's see here. The murder of Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey, which was also the subject of a book by John Dixon Carr that was really, really good, and it was called The Murder of Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey. What actually happened? Who killed Sir Edmund Barry Godfrey, and why, and when, and how? Each one of these things only gets, a little bit of space. There are quite a few things in here. So I don't know how in-depth this will be. I will dig right into it. Like I said, this was all store credit, so I just got books until I had as much as I felt like carrying, and then I came back at the behest of a wise friend who said that that might be a refreshing video for you, and who left on said that it might be a refreshing video for me to make myself. That's proving to be true. I hope that this is a distraction of some kind. But anyway, this last one is the only really big hardcover that I got. Couldn't pass it up. It's by Noel Mostert, and it's the Line Upon a Wind, the Great War at Sea. But it's not the Great War in terms of World War I. It's the dates are 1793 to 1815. This is England versus France. Great big thing. What have we got here? This is from W.W. Norton, but it must be W.W. Norton before I got back into the reviewing game, because I would certainly have wanted this. 2007. So in 2007, I only barely had my feet underneath me again. I would probably not have requested such a thing. I wouldn't have thought that I would get it until I started making new friends at publishers. What have we got here? In February of 1793, France declared war on Britain, and for the next 22 years, the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars raged. This was to be the longest, cruelest war ever fought at sea, comparable in scale only with the Second World War. New naval tactics were brought to bear, along with such unheard-of weapons as rockets, torpedoes, and submarines. The war on land saw the rise of the greatest soldier the world had ever known, Napoleon Bonaparte, whose vast ambition was thwarted by a genius he never met in person or in battle, Admiral Horatio Nelson. So, I mean, this very likely will end up in a certain nautical collection up in Vermont. But I figured I might as well read it first. I'd never encountered it before, I don't think. So there you go. That was a nice healthy Brattle book haul for you on a dark day in the American news cycle. So we'll do a Steve pyramid and we'll block the bean. So we have A Line Upon the Wind. This is not the war of France versus Great Britain, but the naval war. I was fought mostly on sea, and this is the naval component of that. We have Historical Whodunits by a trained historian going at all of these question marks in the history books. We have Wellington by Rory Moore, the first biography, the first volume in a 2-volume biography. We have Emperor of the Field of Swords, Con Ingledon writing Roman historical fiction about Julius Caesar and Pompey and Crassus. We have Stephen Jones's anthology, Mammoth Book of Werewolves. Let's see here. We have The Fourth Man by Andrew Boyle. Mass market study of the Philby scandal. We have Bloodstone by Karl Edward Wagner. Wouldn't mind at all if there were more Kane books in my future. Wouldn't mind that at all. We have Swords Against Darkness, the very first one. So I have 4 and I have 1 now. Then we have The Blooding of Jack Absolute, a prequel that I'll read whether I find Jack Absolute or not. I can't help but think that whoever got rid of this got rid of Jack Absolute as well. The Right Line of Cerdic by Alfred Duggan, about Alfred the Great. A Morbid Taste for Bones by Ellis Peters, the first of the Brother Cadfael mysteries, always good for a reread. And finally, The D.A. Goes to Trial by Earl Stanley Gardner. New. This is like it's never been touched, aside from somebody obnoxiously squibbling on it, probably for a bin of 5-cent books, which tells the story of a crusading, crime-solving DA that I think they're really entertaining. I really enjoy them. So as many DA books as I can get, I will. So there you go. That was a Brattle book haul. I put on my pants and shoes and went outside and went to the Brattle specifically to feel better and maybe help you to feel better a little, maybe distract you just a bit from the news of the day. Nothing we can do about the news, but if any of these interest you, you had a 40-minute distraction, I hope. It certainly perked up my spirits just a bit, as the Brattle and talking to you always does. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. No more videos from me today. I will try to stay in the right mind frame to make a video tomorrow. And I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.